Welcome everybody, and very nice to see all of you with us today. Greetings from Stockholm, and welcome to this webinar about the Swedish fintech market, a market which developed fast in the past years and offers opportunities for developing countries. This webinar is organized by Open Tradegate Sweden, which is a contact point in Sweden that supports companies in developing countries to do business with the Swedish market. I'm thinking like this: we will record this webinar, so I hope that this is okay with all of you. Before starting, I will try to share my screen. And check a little bit today's agenda. Let's see. So I hope everybody sees the screen now, and welcome again. We have exactly 55 minutes for this webinar, and we will try during this time to give you a good picture about the fintech market and about the opportunities that is offering for companies in developing countries. And we will do this together with our guests. At today's agenda, we will go through a quick presentation about the Swedish fintech market together with Kim Sandström. And then a very excited Q&A session with a very practical perspective. Will give us a very practical perspective over the market. And it will be Michael Akampa will interview Anders Norlin. Both Michael and Anders have a very long experience in the Swedish fintech market, and not only. And you will hear more about them in about 15 minutes. At the end, we will have a Q&A session. And what I would like to encourage all of you is to use this opportunity to pick the brain of all our three guests. So use the Q&A part to send the questions to us, and I will try to pick from those questions at the end of the webinar, and our guest will answer them. And before starting, for those of you who are not familiar with Open Tradegate Sweden, I'm thinking that I will give you a very short introduction about us. As said, we are part of the National Board of Trade, which is a Swedish agency under the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And our focus is international trade policy, and EU internal market. What we do in practice, we actually do analysis and participate in negotiations regarding trade agreements. But besides this, we work a lot with development cooperation, and we use all our experience in trade policy and international trade to support developing countries. And these activities are both, we work both with developing cooperation in trade policy aspects, but the ones that are probably most interesting for you is our small group, Open Trade Sweden, that helps exporters in developing countries to do business with the Swedish market. And what we do, we facilitate trade for SMEs, and we focus mostly on SMEs. We create a lot of bridges through our projects. We are funded by the Swedish development aid, so whatever we do is free of charge for the companies in developing or our partners in developing countries. We work a lot with networking and capacity building for the level of companies. And we work in several sectors besides IT. We work also with food and with textile. And this webinar is an example of one of those activities that we do, in which we target all companies in developing countries. But we also, besides working broadly and sharing a lot of market information regarding the Swedish markets, we also work with market experts to help companies to actually enter the Swedish market. For those companies that have a lot of questions, they usually contact us, contact our colleagues with a lot of questions regarding, for example, rules and regulations. We usually answer those questions with the help of public authorities in Sweden. So see us as a bridge with the Swedish market. And when it comes to IT, we actually have both this kind of webinars where we try to spread information, but we also work in long-term projects, and our long-term support is called Tech Step Sweden, and right now is available for Moldova and Ukraine. This is a 15 months long program in which the selected companies will get both a lot of networking opportunities in Sweden, but they'll get also the chance to find their niche in the Swedish market, to get coached by Swedish experts in order really to be able to manage the market by the end of the program. As said, this is right now available for Moldova and Ukraine, but hopefully in the future we will be able to offer it to other countries as well. I think I will stay here. I will try to look at the watch. If you would like to know more about the Swedish market, you find all our market studies on the Open Trade Sweden website. And you can feel free to contact me when it comes to questions related to the IT sector. Good. I think I will stop here when it comes to our presentation, because now it starts the most exciting part of our webinar. I would like to invite Kim Sandström, who is an expert when it comes to the among other fintech market, and Kim wrote for us our latest fintech study that was published yesterday, and will present us a little bit will give us the background about the Swedish fintech market, trends, rules and regulations, and so on. Please, Kim.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna-Maria. So my name is Kim Sandström. I'm a senior advisor at Ultiro and also strategy officer at a small startup. I have a background from working at Trustly, one of the biggest fintech companies in Sweden. I used to be in the commercial strategy area there, so following the market very closely over many years. So I have a few insights, hopefully, to the fintech market. So working at Trustly, I worked from being 50 people to 500 people, going from an regulated market to a very regulated EU market. So I've been through a lot of interesting changes in the fintech space. So today I'll want to give you an overview of the fintech market. I also want to look into the trends, some opportunities, and requirements. So starting off with the Swedish fintech market. Let's see if I can get this to work. Sweden is a big player in the global fintech sector. We have among the most licensed payments institutions in the EU, especially if you look at per capita. So we have many companies in this space. Some examples are Klarna, that you might have heard of, e-commerce payments with a pay later focus. We have Settle, which is a post payment solution that was acquired by PayPal in 2018. So point of sales solution for payments. You have many account-to-account payment solutions. Trustly, where I used to work for many years, which was one of the first ones. And then you have Tink, which was acquired by Visa 2021, Simpler, Bright Payments, and also other types of companies, for example, Froda and Cred, which is lending companies focused on the SME market, small, medium enterprise market in Sweden and internationally. So we have a lot of fintech companies in Sweden. It's a very alive and kicking space. The key enablers of the growth of all the fintechs in Sweden. Why do we have a big fintech market? So first of all, we have a quite robust regulatory framework, which is key for this space because it builds trust and stability for fintech companies that's starting up. You have strong digital infrastructure. So, for example, payment rails and online banks were quite early in this space. So this is a hygiene factor for building out fintechs. There's an entrepreneurial culture in Sweden, which is very important. There's a history with companies like IKEA, H&M, Volvo, for example. So there is a lot of drive and an entrepreneurial spirit in Sweden that's been helping the fintech space to grow. And also Sweden is quite a small market in itself, 10 million people. So a lot of companies starting out, they focus on going global quite early, which helps companies to grow. And last but not least, we have innovations like Bank ID, which has been very key for the fintech market in Sweden, and Swish as well, because it's lowered the barriers to start a company and get going. You can ID yourself online and use payment services quite cheap and well functioning. So that's how the fintech market in Sweden has been able to grow. Looking at VC investments, venture capital investments in Sweden, we can say that they were really, really high in a few years ago, but now dropped a bit. And the reason for that is more investments are going to AI and green energy, and also some economic challenges from rising inflation, etc., rising interest rates. But that said, the market isn't dead. It's very much alive, but it's has changed a bit. So how has it changed? Going into the trends. So we've seen a shift from growth to profitability in the market. We've seen increased challenges of de-risking. I'm going to go through all of this soon. We see a challenging regulatory landscape, and we see cybersecurity. So these are the first four. And starting out with the first one, investor priorities has changed as the market has changed. So today, it's more focused on profitability than growth, and this has mostly affected startups. They need to have really robust business models to survive. You need to focus on sustainable revenue streams and to make it. Continuing to the increased challenges of de-risking, what does that mean? It actually means it's harder for smaller fintechs to get a bank account in a big bank, because banks are a bit cautious giving it to smaller companies. So it's easier for scale-ups than startups. You can work around this by doing innovative partnerships with other companies. So that's how you handle it today. Then you have the regulatory landscape. So if you look at the stats here, you can see that more companies find it burdensome today among the fintechs. And the reason for this is that it's really increasing. The number of laws increase really fast. So especially on the EU side, you have PSD3, PSR, Open Finance Framework, etc., etc. I think there are around 10 new laws coming this and next year. So that's a key trend. And cybersecurity, of course, there is a increasing threats, cyber threat globally. So fintechs need to have advanced threat detection and regular audits and continuous monitoring to handle this. Continuing, the trends, we see also increased use of AI in fintech, of course. We see blockchain and cryptocurrencies, increased SME focus, and climate fintech. So the first one, AI in fintech. What is it used for? So looking at responses from a questionnaire among fintechs, you see that the most common use of AI today is data analysis, process automation, and customer service. But it's also used as for critical processes like close to core business, like loan and credit checks, risk management, and compliance. So it is a technology that's used for business development. And related to this, there is an upcoming EU AI Act that you need to be aware of if you work in the fintech space. So it demands transparency and AI implementation. So this is something you need to think about if you use AI. Also, we have blockchain and cryptocurrencies. We can see that the revenues are growing. There was a slight drop in 2022, but going ahead, it's growing and expected to grow even further. And this is partly driven by the EU MiCA regulation, Markets in Crypto Assets regulation, which came this year. And it gives a bit of credibility to the market. You build trust in the cryptocurrency space. So it's used in finance for tokenization of assets, and you can see it's blockchains used for secure transactions and digital identity, for example. And you have companies like Centiglobe, Fellow, Chromaway in Sweden, which do really interesting work when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrencies. SME focus. That's that more and more companies are focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises, because banks can't really cater to them, as it's too expensive. They have such high overhead costs. So smaller companies get services from new fintechs like Froda and Cred. It's for lending, for example. And then you have climate fintech, which is, of course, a big trend for green payment solution, ESG analytics, and digital crowdfunding, for example. So you have companies like Doconomy in Sweden, which is doing some really interesting things. Moving on to keep time here. Opportunities for companies from developing countries. We selected 4 areas that we think are especially interesting. We have payments. Here you have, for example, cross-border remittances. There's a lot of there's a growing migrant communities in Sweden, for example. So you want to create affordable and efficient remittance services. And then another opportunity is partnerships with Swedish players. There's a culture of partnerships in Sweden. So there's an openness to create new solutions in payments, working together with other companies. AML, this is an increasing area. As Swedish financial institutions, they have face increasing costs for compliance. So developing AI-powered solutions, blockchain-based compliance, KYC processes, it's a way to lower those costs and increase operational efficiency, basically. Climate fintech, you can create global carbon credit markets and, for example, trade certificates, carbon credits, renewable energy certificates, and ESG analytics in the green digital solution space, and integrated fintech. You can partner with major players. For example, Visa and MasterCard work with a lot of fintechs in Sweden. It's a very close relationship, and there's a lot of opportunities in this space. Rounding up regarding requirements for companies coming here. What do you need? There are technical requirements. You have the bank ID integration, for example. That's really important. You have the ISO 20022 compliance, global financial messaging standard that you need to have. Legal requirements, you have the SFSA, Swedish Financial Supervisory Authority. You need to register, you need to obtain authorization to work with payments or e-money issuing. And of course, EU regulations. There are about 10 or so new laws this and next years. So PSD3, FIDA, Financial Data Access Regulation, SEPA, UDIR, AI Act, AML, MICA, GDPR. There are plenty of new requirements here, which you can read more about in the report. Can't go through all of them, too many. You have governance and ethical business practices. You need to of course, follow Swedish ethical practices regarding customer protection and fair competition. Sustainability, aligning with the priorities in Sweden with ESG environmental, social, and governance issues. That's quite important to Swedish companies working here. So that's something you need to have in mind. Last but not least, Swedish business culture. It's can be described as very consensus decision making. You have punctuality, direct communication, flat organizations, and a real emphasis on work-life balance. So these are some of the things you should think of, some of the requirements of working in Sweden that I think could be helpful. But that was it. I think my time is out, but you can find the report and read more in detail on the webpage of the National Board of Trade Sweden.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. I tried actually to share with all of you the link to the report in the chat. Hopefully you see the chat. If you see me a little bit hesitant today, is because my colleague who usually helps me with the technical issues got sick this morning. So I need to manage something that I usually don't. But hopefully you got the link. Otherwise, we will share the recording with you together with the presentations and the links to the report in a couple of weeks. Or just contact me and I will share the report directly. But hopefully you got the link. Good. Thank you so much, Kim, one more time for giving us a good background to the discussion today. And now we came to that point where we will have a more practical perspective of the Swedish fintech market. And in order to do that, we invited Michael Akampa, who is the founder and CEO of Ultiro, a company, an IT company in Sweden that Open Trade Sweden cooperates with. Ultiro is supporting some of our IT projects and is helping us a lot with the market information. And Michael will interview Anders Norlin, who is our special guest today. And who is an experienced board executive, a strategic advisor, and venture builder with an extensive experience on the fintech market and not only. But I will leave the floor to both of you. And Michael, please take the floor and start the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Kim, for a very, very wonderful overview of the Swedish fintech market. Like Anna Maria introduced, my name is Mike Akampa. I'm a fintech venture builder and entrepreneur, and I have been working within this space for the past couple of years. So I'm very, I've witnessed the ups and downs and very bullish about what the future brings. But just to kick off our interview with Anders, Anders, you have a wealth of experience as a strategic advisor and ecosystem builder in fintech and the new climate fintech. Would love to hear more about, from you about your background and how you came to focus on these areas.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here, and hello to everyone. Good afternoon. I think we are in the afternoon time zone. First of all, a good presentation came in the report. I urge you actually to download it because it's a really good overview, short and swift. So keep that in mind. My background, over 20 years on the investor side. So I've been working with startups, entrepreneurs, quite many years. A lot of good things, but also some really bad things, which happens. So I started just around 2000 an investment company, then moved on to a small VC fund. Actually around the time where clean tech, the first wave of clean tech appeared around 2008, 2009. Still have a few holdings there. I think myself and a lot of people experienced the lead times for those type of projects. which was a backlash a few years later from an investor perspectives. And then I've been involved in a few ventures. One was actually a co-working space. We had over 70 tech startups and did some kind of financial advisory during that couple of years. And then I entered and met a few fintechs for the first time in real and worked with a couple ones more in business advisory. One of the today's is one of the booming one, the other one disappeared, and the third one, I'm not sure if it's still around. But that started to pick up 2017. I think that's where you had most of the fintechs established in Sweden still. From 2016, 2017, banks started to be really, really nervous. So they had jumped on different type of initiatives, innovation labs, and then soon to realize maybe not that urgent need. We can talk about that later on. But during that period, we met people that would like to set up a fintech membership organization. So I was gradually lured into that. So starting the community building meeting, I think I met over 100 Swedish fintechs, really to figure out what was the value we could provide. So beside the normal networking, the community also missions to go international, but also foster and take care of delegations coming to Sweden. So, but the main purpose was to create business or facilitate business opportunity. That was the main thing. So that's how I came into fintech space. And at that time, I actually went to Singapore Fintech Festival. So if you haven't been there, you really want to be on top of what's happening in fintech, you should go there. It's in November every year. 2019, before COVID, 60,000 people. Then it started to talk about green finance and green fintech. I think that's what it was a starting point. And soon after that, you can see it in all fintech events on the agenda, green, and then later on climate fintech, and it stayed there. I think it's been increasing, maybe a bit not backlash, but a bit less due to the circumstances we have in Ukraine and Middle East, stuff like that. And I think Sweden was very early, or Swedish startups, entrepreneurs, to adopt that trend and started their business on that. So that's why we were quite early, or very early, to have climate fintechs on board. So then I moved into the investor space again, Swiss organization. So investing very, very early in fintechs from global startups. Today more independent. So I work with a few startups more close to what we talked about, Mike, at deep tech or research related. And see tremendous opportunities, and also, of course, the urgent need if you look what's happening in our global world. So that's what I do today.
Thank you so much for that very good introduction, Anders. And
Hope so.
Yeah, Kim highlighted a very Sweden as a fintech innovation hub with great success stories like Klarna and Trustly. From your perspective, what defining characteristics does the Swedish fintech ecosystem have that makes it unique compared to other markets like the US or Germany or Southeast Asia, for example?
Two things. I think we had the infrastructure really early. I mean, we have the PC reform, and most people in Sweden had a computer really early. I think we're first on mobile network and mobile phones really, really early. And then you have a tech-savvy population on potential entrepreneurs. What do we do with this gear? So they started to hack around with the computers. I think that's it's one piece of it. And we had a few really brave entrepreneurs. One of them in the 90s when we had the mobile phone. Before smartphone, just the text phone started, okay, how do we do payments, person-to-person payments with this gear, and start to fiddle around with that. So I think it was in the mid-90s. So I think that type of people are the role models. And Skype maybe is the most well-known, with Niklas Zennström becoming a unicorn very early. So I think you have that ripple effect. And soon as the fintech was coming, we are really early to adopt new trends, what's happening, especially from the US or UK, but especially from the US. So I think we're early, and we had a digital infrastructure everywhere, more or less built in. So it's easy to adopt. So then you had a few people, really clever, really ambitious and brave, like the founders of Trustly, Klarna, iSet, and so forth, and then made a success story. And then now the ripple effect of those, you saw the list from Sifted, I think. The Klarna is the number one unit or startup factory. So 60 plus whatever startups are originated from Klarna. So I think that effect is massive, massive for the Swedish market. So, but again, digitalization really early, and then picking up trends super fast. We like to be on top of trends. That's what I always tell people.
Very, 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 extremely, very interesting. And right now, what do you see as the key trends that are shaping Swedish fintech, and what areas do you see to have like the most innovation or the most growth potential looking forward?
Yeah, a bit both sad, but it's the cybersecurity and the money laundering. It's big thing. I mean, the banks. I talked to someone a few weeks ago. I think 1/3 of all the employees are working on battling financial crime and fraud. And then you have a bank of 20,000 people. So it's thousands of people manually controlling everything with fraud. And so that's a enormous area and a deep urgent need for solutions. Again, with the banks, not the quick to adopt, but if there's any area which is needed, also probably a huge opportunity in that area. And then you have, of course, all the European structures with the open finance coming, hopefully big time, which will open up for services. So I think we'll see that in the coming years. And to piggyback on Klarna's smooth payments, we expect everything to be smooth. Accounting, payments, anything, insurance. So I think that's a trend you see. It's coming more and more smooth in all areas, not only buy now, pay later, but everything, for not only for consumers, but also for SMEs or companies.
Touching up on some of the challenges that you highlighted around AML, around compliance, and also piggybacking back to what Kim said, where this is a major challenge with a lot of regulations emerging in this space. What should fintech companies from developing countries know about this evolving regulatory regime, and what challenges and opportunities could emerge?
Well, if you can be on top of it, understand them, and not only the abbreviations, what they really mean, implications, I think is a key, because for me, it's pretty, I wouldn't say messy, but it's not easy to get an overview of all the regulations. And then you're on top of that on the sustainability area with all the directives coming from European Union. So if you can have that and how to convert it to solution that could be plugged in to players, because again, they're good on the service they provide to individuals or SMEs or whatever. But maybe that's on the back end, something they really need to plug in or be on top of. So I think that's maybe the biggest opportunity if you come from abroad and want to plug into the Swedish fintech market. And then you need to understand them in detail. It's maybe not the funniest work in the world, but I don't know if you do that. I think because it's for the coming years, I don't see it's going to be massive.
Exciting. Partnership and collaboration has been highlighted as a major fabric of the Swedish fintech ecosystem. And in your experience working with fintech ventures, what do you see them typically looking for in international partners and suppliers? Are there any specific characteristics, qualities, or standards that they value most?
Kim touched it. We have a society built on trust. So if you build that trust, don't mess it up. And Sweden is a market, but it's not that big. So if you fuck it up, sorry, then you're easily out. So handle it with care and be very transparent and straightforward. So you come to the point. Because if you miss out on that, It's not destroying one relation, it easily destroys the rest of the relationship. It's in the fintech space. I mean, word by mouth goes fast in this industry as other industries. So just be very transparent and don't overpromise. Usually said under-promise and over-deliver instead. So don't say something more than you actually cannot deliver, or have a fear you cannot deliver. Don't do that.
And beyond trust, are there any other common pitfalls or strategies that have worked particularly well for companies from outside Sweden that have partnered with Swedish fintech companies and ecosystem?
But if you have the skills, the competence, if it's now as a provider of IT, or let's say plug-in AI solution or cybersecurity, be on top of that, they can prove the knowledge you have. So because I don't think it's any obstacles to get the contact, or any suspicious mindset that, okay, you come from this country, well, that's not good. I think it's an openness for that, and I think everyone knows about the battle of talents in Sweden, or especially in Stockholm, in the fintech industry. I mean, it's big. It's, I don't know, 25,000 people, whatever it is, and it's a battle of talent, and especially on the tech side. I mean, they are jumping on talents from directly from universities, and still we don't have a master degree in fintech and stuff like that. So if you can prove that, I think it's open doors to have the discussions and negotiation pretty fast. I'm really convinced. But don't spam. You have to build up the personal relationship. It's not that you just send an inquiry on LinkedIn. Doesn't work. So you have to move around and take it from person to person, from company to company.
So essentially, build trust and
yes,
long-lasting relationships.
I mean, I have so many calls from fintechs. Anders, do you know any good ITs? Then they want to have someone to relate to. So then there's the other one I know that have someone. They are appreciating the service, super satisfied. Of course, they jump on that first. So if it's more, you can have a proof, maybe not from Stockholm or Sweden, but maybe from other countries, whatever. Then you're working for this fintech in this market. It gives that trust or reliability. So it goes faster. Otherwise, it takes longer time. Still doable, but it takes a bit more time.
And I reckon the minimalistic culture and also starting small and scaling solutions and collaborations also builds into that trust. But talking of sustainability, we see that sustainability is growing as a major trend, and Kim touched about it, and it's featured very strongly in the report. How are Swedish fintech companies integrating sustainability and sustainable practices in their business models? Are there any specific initiatives you see or observe on the rise?
I mean, for back a few years, you had a few new startups, like the economy that Kim mentioned. You have Normative, it's scaling super fast. World Favor, been around a few years. So they are now growing gradually on the European level, or even international. But newcomers, I don't see that many. I think it's been like one stage boom, or not boom, but a few new players. And I think we're pretty well advanced a few years back, but now if I compare to other markets, UK, Germany, it's leveling up a bit. Maybe you can see it's built in. So let's say one fintech I saw, they have a service for wealth management. Now they add on or integrate also sustainability solutions, so you can have advisory for those individuals that would like to have sustainability portfolio, blah, blah, blah. So that's one. Klarna have their initiative with the Milky Wire that you can actually donate for climate projects. You have the carbon credits, and one area, biodiversity credits, coming big. So there's a few. Nature finance, I think, is the area that we see most of the new stuff going on. But it's like built in. So they add on that solution on existing fintech ready. One I actually talked to recently, they do SME lending. Very efficient with digital tools, analyzing transaction data. Now they want to explore, can we also embed that with climate data more in real time? So they're actually looking for that type of solution. So they can give the credit score not only finance, but also climate or green because that's, it's going to be a shift from credits, and then you have maybe green credits or green, it's a bit lower. You have a discount or better rates if you can prove that. So that's how we'll see coming.
Very, very interesting. And potentially that creates an entirely new market where Sweden is likely poised to lead. Some call it climate fintech and nature finance and so on. But just moving into, in the interest of time, moving into like a future outlook, how do you see the Swedish market or the Swedish fintech industry evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And what opportunities and challenges do you envisage for new entrants and particularly, partners from developing countries?
That's, if you can do that, I would be a billionaire, I guess. I think we're still going to be very early to adopt. So we're interested, of course, with AI. It's everywhere. Put it AI first, how that will develop. Both are integrated. There could be an opportunity for providers on that. And also it's a new entrant, because whatever built 3-4 years ago, I wouldn't say it's obsolete, but then you can have other players who build it much faster, much cheaper. So if there will be something moving there, it's both an opportunity, but also could be seen as a bit of a threat. So for some players. And again, everything with the anti-money laundering fraud, I think is something that's going to be embedded everywhere much more for everyone. I mean, it's critical. And again, now with the situation with Russia, talk to other tech areas, it's like it's coming more than we think, actually. So is that opportunity? No, it's something you need to react on. Then you have some areas with sustainability. I hope it will pick up more. Nature finance is one of those areas which you put value on natural resource, and you can actually trade that. So you have carbon credits, biodiversity, but the actual nature. It's what I hear. It's coming big time. And then you have allocation of big institutional capital on that. And that gives room for players, fintechs, to actually provide that type of service.
Exciting. And that's actually an area that I'm personally very, very excited about, because of all the challenges we face with climate and environment, and also an area, where truly Sweden could also lead. But with that, thank you so much, Anders, for these very wonderful insights. And I'll now hand over to Anna Maria to steer us through the Q&A and closing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for both of you for this interesting discussion. We actually have a number of questions in the Q&A, so I will have to choose since we don't have so much time left. I will put you the challenge to answer quickly and short and to the object, so to say. Okay. One of the question is related to the Swedish, if the Sweden's position worldwide has been affected by the reduced investments in the fintech. Maybe Kim would like to answer, or Anders, or feel free, one of you to jump in.
I don't think we have been hurt or affected more than anyone else. I just made the comment, didn't get out, but if you checked it, investment amounts 2021 and 2022, half of everything or even more was allocated for Klarna. They did their Series G and Series H, massive, $1 to $1.5 billion per year. So if you take that out, it's okay. It was a bit higher on that, but it's not that bad. It's bad for really early stage fintechs because they need proof on traction. But that's everywhere. It's for every tech industry. So I don't see it's worse for fintech. I would say even opposite. Now it's more focused and professional early stage VCs popping up in our region. So I think it's as I see it, now I've been around for 20 years, it's pretty good. It's not easy to get it, but its capital is not it's not lack of capital, but the access, yes. but it's not worse than the other sector. That's how I see it.
Good, perfect. Thank you. Another question, which is probably directed to you, Anders. What are the IE opportunities available, especially in banking and credit risk? What are the challenges there? Maybe you can add quickly to what you just said earlier, if you feel that there is more to say.
If I understand, if you have service to be provided towards bank?
But it's mostly IE opportunities.
Yes, I wouldn't do it for the banks if you come from outside Sweden. I wouldn't do it even if you're in Sweden, to be honest. So then you're hitting a large. We have 4 big banks, oligopol. Whatever they do, they want to avoid any risk taking whatsoever. So I met entrepreneurs. Nothing bad for the Swedish bank. I think it's pretty similar to other markets, but don't do it. That's my clear message. Go for fintechs that need that service that potentially work with the banks. That's
okay.
Maybe there's a service provider to the banks. I'm not consult as a business that have as a tool in their box, but I'm not the person to have that info, to be honest. But not direct to the banks. Don't do that.
Okay. Michael or Kim, would you like to add anything? Or should we take one more question, maybe?
Very much.
Michael.
What Anders said is it's very hard to do directly on your own, and especially directly to the banks. So pretty much partnerships that we talked about, either embed your solution into a fintech that's already servicing banks, and it has to be unique, it has to be novel, and in that way you're able to to service the banks, but indirectly.
Good. Exactly. I will pick one more question maybe from the chat. How can companies from developing countries find a partner in Sweden in a clear way, step by step? I would like to say that in the report there is a little bit of tips and a checklist of things that you need to think about and work with in order to be able to enter the Swedish market. And then from the practical experience that we have working with IT companies, coming here probably is the best way to actually meet the right kind of people, and using the events that are taking place in Sweden where fintech community will gather. And you will find in the report a couple of links to such events. But is it any event that we would like to recommend especially?
I think, for example, Stockholm Fintech Week is a key one in Sweden. It's a Fintech Day in November. It's just been. And then there are Nordic ones, Nordic Fintech Summit, Nordic Fintech Week, Tech Barbecue, Slush, for example. So there are quite a few. In Sweden, I would say Stockholm Fintech Week is the big one.
And maybe just to add, Tech Arena and the Nordic Software Summit, that they're a bit broader, but there's quite a very big representation of fintech. And also to quickly add on that if you choose to enter Sweden, I think you need to have a sustainable roadmap. It's not like a quick that you come in today and you have business tomorrow. It has to be sustainable, and you need to have a very good export plans. And I think the services and insights offered by Open Trade Gate Sweden is really like one way to come into the market to leverage that support.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a very good thing that you added, Michael, because we realize that this is a little bit different than the usually more traditional markets that you might be working in. In Sweden, you need to calculate that it takes time. And it takes time because you need to build that trust. Trust is nothing that you build coming once or twice or 3 times here and just disappearing afterwards. You need to have a good strategy and focus to do that. And I think that I will try to answer the other questions directly into the Q&A section, because being on time is another thing that is important in Sweden. And now we have 2 minutes over our time, but since we started 2 minutes later, maybe it's okay with this. And I was thinking that if you heard a lot of things, hopefully useful for you today, and get you interested about the Swedish fintech market. If you have questions, feel free to send them to us, and we will try to answer it. And one of the things that I actually picked from what Anders said is that you need to build trust. Don't spam. This is what is usually happening in our experience. A lot of companies prefer to send out mails, to everybody, the same kind of mail. Try to be personal. Try to understand the person that you write to, and that will be your first step into getting a meeting with a Swedish company. If you just send the same email to everybody, you will not get anything. Build personal relationships. Be straightforward and transparent. It's so important in Sweden, but probably everywhere else in the world as well. And under promise and over deliver. That I really liked. It's a good thing to remember, because having a partnership with a Swedish company could be extremely beneficial. It's usually long term, and but you need to show commitment. And don't forget that this is build trust, show commitment to the market, be serious, and try to understand the person that you address, and you will be definitely successful. Then you will need to take care of everything else as well, rules and regulations, and the good product that would feed the market, of course. Thank you so much for this session, and this is the third session that we had. The first two, IT and gaming, will be soon available online as well. We will publish this recording as well and send out the presentations in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, both to my guests and to you who participated and to stay with us until the end. And see you next time. Andrei from Moldova. You can stay a couple of minutes, maybe, and I can answer you directly. Or I can try to answer in the chat.
I'm logging out, but
perfect. Thank you so much, Anders.
No, but if there's still people on, just reach out. Start with one contact, and from then to ask for another 2 contacts, and from there you take 4. So just have a bridge point or bridgehead into Sweden. It will be very good opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. I will not be able to close this until I answer a question. This is why I'm still online. But feel free to log out, and thank you so much for today. Bye.